directions that I feel he should be going. We just shared tears together for a half hour on that rock, telling each other we love each other, and that's a bond that'll never be broken.
Well, I see you give more than I can take. Well, I only harvest some. As the days fly past, will we lose our grasp or fuse it in the sun?
Anybody that's doing anything that recognizes and blesses the unique inherent qualities of young people probably is doing some good, because the general cultural atmosphere is to deny that. And that creates an unnecessary wound in young people. Young people don't feel welcome.
Dream up, let me fill your cup with the promise of a man.
We filmed that on a Boys to Men weekend outside of San Diego. I think it was around 2003 or 2004. Can't even remember the year now. So I want to go ahead and spend a little bit of my time that remains sharing with you what I consider to be my 10 best mentorship practices. First of all, I would say that it's really helpful for mentees to choose their own mentors. You cannot and should not force a mentor on them, especially with teens, because they won't say a lot, but that's fine, because that gives you as a mentor, assuming you're an older man, an opportunity to sit in silence with them, to hold your own tongue, and then let them speak when they're ready to. It is interesting, though, with some of my adult mentees, for the first time in my life, I've actually been asked to talk more about my own life. And I get it, that this particular mentee gets fed from hearing my own struggles and about the ways that I learned to overcome them or not overcome them. So a third one here is don't give advice unless specifically or directly asked. It's important that the mentees work through their own challenges, because it's the struggle itself that teaches best. A fourth one, it's important to be empathetic, but not sympathetic. You have to listen compassionately, but pity or anything akin to it is completely counterproductive. Especially teens, young people will sniff it out in a second and be completely put off by it. And again, if asked, it's fine for mentors to share what similar problems they may have faced in their life and how they've dealt with them. But the mentee should always make key decisions for themselves after they've weighed the pros and cons of each different pathway, because that's a huge, significant factor in their growth. The fifth one, in order for the relationship to succeed, mentors must learn, grow, and gain something from the relationship too. Because if it's all giveaway, if it's all 100% altruism, yeah, I'm doing a good service for this person, no, it will not work. You have to be fed in some significant way by this relationship too. And if you're not, then something is wrong. And frankly, it's usually something wrong with you, the mentor, due to perhaps your own narcissistic wounding, your own arrogance and impatience, that you turn the relationship into something that feeds you. No, it won't work that way. You have to be there in service to them. So if you're not being fed in some way, then it really is a matter of taking yourself to task for the growth that you need to do. to find exactly what is available in this relationship that you're missing. So a sixth one, mentors must acknowledge and bless. So, you know, I've searched for a long time to find synonyms to use for blessing, because I've had friends tell me that it's too Christian, you know, that term is too connoted for them to the Christian faith. And I get that, that's fine, that may be the case for them. But the fact of the matter is, other terms that are synonyms like acknowledgement or recognition, honoring, I mean, a lot of them come close, but for me, they don't do the same job that blessing does. Now, and let me drill down for a moment into blessing. It has to be really specific. So you've got to call out and name in very detailed and specific ways exactly what you see happening with mentees. And you know, you could, I mean, if you're mentoring a teen, you know, let's say a young teen, you know, it's like, Joe, I want to tell you that I saw how you had a little bit of patience with your sister when she was irritating the crap out of you, and you decided not to whack her, but you actually asked her, what is it you need right now? I saw that, and I want to honor you for that, and I acknowledge you for that, because that's one step that you're taking closer to your mature masculinity, and it's a beautiful step. So that kind of specificity is exactly what's called for, because kids, especially teens, know when you're bullshitting them with vagaries. You know, it's like, oh, you're such a good man, you know. No, give specifics. Okay, 7, model accountability, show up. Mentors signal their respect for mentees by treating them no differently than they would some big shot or some VIP. And of course, so much of the wounding, as I'm sure you've heard in the last 2 days, of young people, is men simply not showing up for them. So we actually begin to heal some of those wounds, particularly in teens and younger boys, by simply showing up. But in a greater sense, we have to model accountability. We have to walk our talk. And when we say we're going to be there at 7 o'clock to pick them up, you damn well better be sure we're there at 7 o'clock to pick them up. The 8th one, mentors should honor mentees by asking them for input on their own challenges. You know, one of the standard features of my monthly calls with my mentees is we check in with each other. And that means that I, of course, am modeling the same kind of depth and authenticity that I'm asking for from my mentees. And you better believe that if I'm struggling with something, then I will often ask, you know, well, do you have any feedback for me on this? Do you have a way of looking at this that I haven't thought about that could be helpful? And by doing that, we signal to our mentees that we see each other not in some hierarchy, but as equals, and that they have as much to give us, again, as we have to give them. So the greatest blessing a mentor can give a mentee is severing the mentorship bond. And I just recently did this with one of my mentees. I said, you know, it's been 3 years. I feel like you've learned what it is that I have on offer. And now it's time for you to move on. And if you're not already a mentor yourself as a mentee, you need to become one, but you also need to seek out other mentors for new learning. And in particular with this one man, one of the advantages that I see of him finding new mentorship, he's having struggles in his marriage. And I told him, I said, I've never been divorced and I've never had children. Maybe you can find a mentor who brings that to the table, who has those life experiences that I don't have. And finally, mentees need to learn how and when to acknowledge and appreciate their own mentors, so that every mentee has an understanding of their lineage, if you will, who their teachers were, who their best role models were. One of the things that I have in my Rites of Passage book at the back is an acknowledgement of all of my rites of passage teachers. And it's a long list, but there's an amazing group of incredible men, mostly men, but some women, who have taught me an enormous amount. And I will go to my dying day wanting to acknowledge and honor them for the gifts that they brought me in their teaching. So I realize we're already almost out of time here, but I do want to share with you a few more bits here. And these are desired qualities of a mentor, okay? And most of these will be familiar, so I'll go through them quickly. You've got to have a strong desire to support young leaders. You've got to be selfless. You've got to do it as an act of service, ideally born out of your own sense of personal mission. One mistake I made with a teen mentee years ago was insisting that he reach out to me and that he be accountable when he was not yet ready at that phase of his life to be accountable. And so I blew it. I basically, I didn't know my way around an ultimatum that I've given him, which was, if you can't call me to cancel a meeting, then we're done. And guess what? That's exactly what happened. So that was on me, and that was not him. I didn't have the patience and wisdom of that at that time to know that I'm just being tested and I need to show up for him anyway. It helps to have some process and emotional work experience along with your business and professional experience. That's extremely helpful. You have to be able to hold space for others and make mistakes and shine without needing to be noticed yourself. Again, if you want recognition, go elsewhere and get it. Don't get it from mentees. You've got to understand the act of blessing through actions, words, or energy. It doesn't even have to be words or action. And I want you to really appreciate that. It's your energy. It's just simply how you hold space in silence. And that witnessing of other mentees, particularly young people, in itself is a gift. And I want you to get that. We don't need to say or do anything. Just be present with them. One of the things that is important to understand is we don't need a lot of effort to make moments be sacred. One of the big deficiencies in our culture right now is there's very little that feels sacred anymore. Well, we can make every moment in our lives sacred. It's very simple. It's two ingredients: attention and intention. So attention is absolutely essential when we're with our mentees. You've got to be present. You've got to be there picking up every nuance of every word that they say and of every bodily movement that they make. All of it is valuable information that's going to help enormously. And the intention is also simple. It involves giving away this act of service to grow this person into the greatest, fullest expression of their individuality that they can. So responding to intuition is important, utilizing your right brain capacities of creativity, spontaneity, and not just left brain logical linear stuff. This is not paint by number. This is art, okay? It's not science, it's art. And also risk reaching out to a mentee rather than them always reaching out to you. And also recognize that you're in service to the process. And sometimes it's a goddamn mystery. I've been in many, many processes, both as a mentor and mentee, where I had no clue where we were going. And that's a lesson too. How can we sit in the unknowing and accept that we don't know where we're going? So don't be in rescue mode unless there's truly some danger. Be humble enough to recognize, admit you're not a saint. We actually teach best through awareness and admission of our own flaws. And understand that mentorship fulfills generativity. It helps restore links in the chain of time that are now broken throughout most of our communities across the country. And cultural wisdom is passed through each of us to successive generations. So I got to stop. So let me just go ahead, Michael, just show this last piece, because I want to end hearing the voices of young people, because that is what we all need to be listening to. And frankly, if we listen to them, they'll tell us what they need.
Anthony, Anthony.
Year-old,
14-year-old, a 14-year-old, and an 8-year-old.
Michael, this is the wrong one. I wanted you to play number 2.
Preteen, drug and alcohol abuse.
Teenage boy.
Sorry about that. That's an 11.5-minute short film on initiating teens, which I'd love to share with you, but we don't really have time for. So I'm going to share with you this 90-second piece. It's number 2, I believe, called Mentoring the Future. And it's just teen voices.
There's so much struggle that our kids are going through.
Kids don't have the attention even from their parents because they're so busy working.
What's our world going to be in the future, our generation? Like, what are we going to do? How are we going to step up to the plate?
We have the opportunity to help other human beings out, and I kind of feel it's our responsibility too.
So I'll need to be more giving, and I'll need to be disciplined to know what should be going on.
Sometimes I feel like I need there to be an adult for me to be able to talk about it, you know, about sex and drugs, and I fear it because I don't know about it.
Don't be afraid to take risks.
It all starts with one person, really. One person can change the world.
If you respect me,
I will hear you.
If you listen to me,
I will feel understood.
If you understand me,
I will feel appreciated.
If you appreciate me,
I will know your support.
if you support me,
As I try new things,
I will become responsible.
when I am responsible, I will grow to be independent.
In my independence,
I will respect you and love you all of my life.
Okay, well, the joke is on me. Michael just told me that you guys see that at the beginning of the summit every day.
It's beautiful and valuable, though. Thank you for reminding us that you made that years ago, 10 years ago.
Yeah, it was about that. Yeah, I shot it in LA. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. Well, questions, comments? I'm sure you have plenty.
Yeah, let's take a few questions from the audience. Who would like to go first? Go ahead, Steve. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. I love your videos. I love them. And you know, I've seen this first one a lot, and I wonder, do you have any follow through or know what happened with Jeremy?
Yeah, well, actually, the best people to ask would be Craig and Joe in San Diego. But the last I heard was some years ago, and he did go and live with his dad for a while. And that was pretty much the last I heard. Now, when it comes to the other young boy that we see in that same video,
Jay,
he's now a doctor.
Wow. Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
Steve, who else would like to ask a question? Go ahead and unmute yourself. Go ahead, T. Greg. Is it working?
Sat in your dining room talking to you about this. I love your work, man. So grateful to be joined in mission with you on this stuff. And just everything you bring is always so poignant and powerful. Yeah, Dr. Gail did talk a lot about some of the structures of initiation, but what I would like to hear from you, which I've seen in some of your films, has to do with that healing quality you talked about, but the part of initiation that, you know, about the community, about the responsibility of the community to welcome the role that the community plays in being in that space of, you know, that this is such a vital part of our humanity for the community to be able to accept that new rebirth that new unfolding that's happening and that emergence that's occurring, and how healing it is for the rest of us. Can you speak to that dynamic of the initiation process?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was, I forget his name, but the expert on adolescent psychology from the University of Pennsylvania, who I interviewed, and he's in our Rites of Passage video. Anyway, he said we need to grasp with how we're cutting off the well springs of our own community nourishment by not helping young people be guided toward their own mission in life. So traditional indigenous wisdom basically had it that when a person comes back from a vision quest or rite of passage, whatever it may be, that they were bearing gifts. They had medicine, right? And whatever form it took that was unique to them, it was understood implicitly that the community needed that. Okay, so if they were, I don't know, a comedian, they'd love to tell jokes, and that they wanted to do that as their life's calling. It was understood that that was a service that was going to be provided, a needed service to the whole community, because we need more comedians, okay? So the same is true for any kind of avocation that any person might have. The idea is that it's a mandala, right? And that every community is a mandala, and that every individual in it is one little piece of that mandala, and together it creates the perfect whole.
Beautiful, thank you. We still have time for more questions. I think Daryl is next. So go ahead, Daryl.
Thank you, Frederick. Thanks. This is food to the soul. I'm remembering so many things, but I wanted to quickly share one of the mentoring mistakes I made in my life that turned out to be a very good learning lesson. Was I started a mentoring program at Howard University called Man Up Mentoring. And I modeled it by MKP. So I had guys who had talisman. And one of my student leaders showed up one day without his talisman. And I felt like, I'm a pretty egocentric kind of guy. So I get to make an example of him. We have these standards, whatever. So I asked him in front of all of his peers, how dare you show up without your talisman? I hope you have a pretty good excuse. And he sheepishly looked at me and said, I apologize. What happened was on the summer vacation, I was in Egypt in the Nile River. One of my friends fell into the river. He was about to be eaten and he can't swim. So I dove in and I rescued him. I pulled him back in the boat and I lost my talisman in the Nile River.
Beautiful.
I got nothing.
Yeah.
I got nothing. Me and everybody else in the room are in tears. And I'm like, if there was a lesson, thank you for teaching it to me. So my invitation is, don't be afraid to make a mistake, learn from it, pivot from it. We as mentors are always also the student. We are always also the mentee. And thank you for everything you've had to say.
Well, thank you, Daryl. And you just said, if there were a lesson, I want to invite you to share with us any lesson that you gleaned from that.
First was, don't let my ego get in the way. Number 2 was, always be willing to let the mentee lead. I'm just the canvas, but it's the mentee that's doing the work. And that's it.
Beautiful. Thank you, Daryl.
Thank you, Daryl. Next, we have Walter.
Hi, Frederick. In your list of attributes for a mentor, you mentioned about being able/willing to end the relationship. I'm a little bit unclear about that. Are you saying ending the relationship in total?
No.
Or are you saying transition to a different type of relationship?
Yes, thank you for asking for that clarification. Yes, I'm not asking for the end, the capital E end, but yes, a transition. And in fact, what I do, I actually make it pretty formal with my mentees. I actually have an agreement. And I say, this is what I'm going to do for you. And at the very end of this agreement, I say, at the end of whatever period of time we work together, whether it's 2 years, 3 years, 4, 5, but when we draw to the close of this mentoring phase of our relationship, part of what will transition us into a new relationship is we're going to have a conversation about how you can support my work. Because it breaks my heart that I've had many mentees over the years who, once we ended that aspect of our relationship, I never heard from again. And so I decided that's not doing myself a service. And I have a nonprofit company. I always need support for my work. So, all I want to do is have a conversation about how you can contribute. And it has to be something, of course, that fulfills you, but we'll work together to find that. And then we'll transition into friendship. And then maybe you'll support me in some ongoing way or a one-time way or whatever.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. You know, Walter, Akilah Sherrills, who's one of my teachers in this work, is a beautiful man in Los Angeles. He's most famous for brokering the truce between the Crips and the Bloods gangs in LA in the 90s. He talks about the necessary betrayal of the mentor. Now, this is something that you can read about in Joseph Campbell and elsewhere, but he feels very strongly that at some point there has to be a necessary betrayal so that the mentor betrays the mentee in some way, and that signals the end of that phase of their relationship. And that it's kind of the metaphor that he uses is the mother bird pushing the baby bird out of the nest, right? Because if the mother bird doesn't do that, that baby bird's never going to learn to fly, and some of them don't. They fall to the ground and die. Right. But then maybe that's the way it was supposed to be. So anyway, I talk about this in my book, but I don't use that term in quite the same way that he does. I think that it doesn't have to be a betrayal. It can be a negotiated change of relationship. But in fact, it often happens organically anyway, because the mentees start to see, holy shit, this guy is really flawed. You know, they start to see all of the flaws that we have, and they go, you know what? I don't think so anymore. And so they move on, and that's perfect. That's wonderful.
So brilliantly said, Frederick. Our next questioner is Jordan. Go ahead and take a moment, mute yourself.
You said Jordan, I'm looking at Marshall. Hey, Marshall.
Is Marshall there?
Hey, Frederick.
Oh, Marshall. Okay, Marshall.
Oh, am I on? Okay. Frederick, I miss staffing with this here, brother. I love you, man. Thanks for what you shared about the mentor-mentee. I had the honor and privilege to talk with one of my mentees from about 10 years ago, working with him and here in Sacramento. He's in medical school. Actually, he's out. He's working now. He's back east. And I reached out to him. He reached back. We had an amazing conversation. He was all happy to hear me. I just about cried. I mean, I know that doesn't happen on a regular basis, and that was a real gift. So I accepted it. That was just I just want to share that. It's very sweet. It doesn't happen all the time. You guys have been at this as long as I have and longer. You know, it doesn't happen all the time. When it does, just accept the gift and move on. So thank you, Frederick.
Well, thank you. And so I want to be clear, Marshall, you reached out to him, correct?
I did, yes.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. Now, one of the things that I've been doing during this time of COVID is to reach out to my own teachers to make sure that I've thoroughly thanked them partly why I drove across the country a month and a half ago was to see my dying Zen teacher in Wisconsin. And I wanted to tell him from the bottom of my heart what a difference he made for my life. And I wanted to do it face to face, because who knows when I'll see him again. So I think it's important, though, that we don't necessarily have to formalize the relationship either, especially in this time. If you know there's a man or a woman or a girl or a boy out there on their own struggling, and by the way, I heard 25% of teens have suicidal ideation these days, and that breaks my heart. So all I'm saying is reach out to them. Just reach out. You don't have to say, hey, I want to be your mentor. No, just say, listen, how you doing? I was just thinking of you. How you doing? That could be a life-changing moment.
Thank you, Frederick. Jordan, were you able to unmute yourself?
Yes.
Great.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me? Awesome. Frederick, it's kind of along what you were saying and kind of what Daryl was bringing up at one point. I'd love if you could just talk more about balancing, holding the young men accountable to maybe a higher standard towards growth, and then meeting them where they're at. How do you strike that balance, right? Because in your example, you talked about, well, I need to reach out to them, and it's totally appropriate, but how do you navigate that dance with that?
Well, yeah, especially given how I screwed it up with my mentee in Newark, New Jersey, right? Yeah, I don't think that there's a simple single sentence answer to that. I think you have to weigh it in the moment based on the evolution of your relationship. Now, having said that, I think it's important to teach the values that we want the young people to aim toward. And one of the things, if we had more time, I would share with is my definition of mature masculinity, which includes, of course, accountability. So I think it's good to name that and then say, you know, and this is what a grown man does. You know, he's accountable for his actions. He's accountable to the agreements that he made. But you have to play it by ear with a younger person, and you can ask for it, but I really advise against drawing that line in the sand like I did. That is a recipe for disaster. Is that helpful? You're muted again, Jordan.
I think I'm sensing it was.
Yeah, that is helpful. I think we struggle with finding that balance as well. There is times where it feels like drawing the line in the sand would be helpful.
Well, then try it. Try it and see what happens. And if he shows up, great. But if he doesn't show up, I just invite you to not say that's it, but to go back to him and say, why didn't you show up?
Yeah. Like I want to hold a wall, right, that they can like climb over, not just smash up against.
Yeah.
Thanks. Appreciate you.
You too.
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Frederick. We have one more question for you. And again, thank you so much for staying on with us so much longer, Frederick. We've got a last question from Daryl.
I'll make this brief. I love everything you're saying, and I've found my way into all of that. I guess the challenge for me is we get these mentees for a couple of hours, maybe a week, and we don't get the families. And I find that, you know, a lot of what I've done or built is undone next week. What's your prescription? I mean, I'd love to get, like, you know, the mother, the sister, the cousin, everybody in the house. I can't. So what's your prescription?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Daryl. I'll say two things. First of all, that is one of the issues that gets batted back and forth in the whole rites of passage community is, are we doing a disservice to a young person who we initiate and awaken to the greatness of their life and the potentials of their life, and then put them back into the same dysfunctional family or community that they came from. The mentor can make the difference there, though. If the mentor is there before, during, and after that initiation, that becomes a lifeline that young person can use to climb out of that dysfunctional family or community. And I'll say one other thing, and I don't know why, but it just even moves me to remember this. I read a book by Alice Miller, the Swiss psychologist, years ago. And I don't think it was the book that made her famous, The Gifts of the Wounded Child, but whatever the book was. Anyway, she said, to make a lifelong difference in a young person sometimes only takes one moment where an adult sees them and acknowledges them, and that too can become a rope that they can cling to through all the madness and the horror and the pain and the dysfunction in order to climb out of their hell and begin to learn a different way of being. And I think the example that she used, or maybe it was the example that I used when I interpreted that, was a situation where I saw a parent beating a child at a mall. And I said, I didn't say anything to the parent. I said, I want you to know that you don't deserve any of this, and that you can still grow to become the human that you want to be, the boy, man that you want to become. And then I ran because the parents started chasing me. But, it was because I read those words from Alice Miller.
Thank you, Frederick. That was so powerful. Friends, I wish we had so many more hours. We have one more question, though. Claudine, you have a question. Please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yes. Can you hear me okay there?
Yes.
Yes. Frederick, thank you so much for your incredible work. I did my first Women Within weekend training about 18 years ago and have done so many things since then. And it was when Parth shared your videos, your documentary with me, that it was so riveting that it inspired me to be a volunteer for this summit. And that's the power of your work. And I'm just curious if you have any more rites of passage documentaries in the queue, if this is something you'll continue to do, since these images and just being able to witness it from this other side is so moving. It moved me into being committed to this. And thank you again.
Well, thank you, Claudine. The answer is yes, absolutely. If you go to our warriorfilms.org website and you click on Rites of Passage, you'll see the film, the 11.5-minute film that I stopped Michael from showing a half an hour ago. That short film is going to be expanded into a feature-length film. And I hope to finish it next year. I've already done up to 30 interviews with some of the most brilliant minds in the world thinking about these issues, including Michael Mead and Robert Bly and Starhawk and Angeles Arian and Akila Sherrills, all of these amazing minds. I'm finishing a 5-film series right now about veterans that uses this rites of passage framework as its unifying theme. So 3 of the films are already done. 2 will be done within the next couple months. And we're already getting them out into the world in festivals, and I'm signing distribution agreements this week. So the basic premise of these films is that veterans, there's nothing wrong with them. And this whole notion of PTS is problematic to begin with because we're pathologizing them. And in fact, the only problem is really with society. We have forgotten how to receive veterans. We have forgotten how to receive warriors when they come home from service. So we've forgotten how to create ritual circles where we can sit with them and allow them to unwind and to share whatever pains, whatever horrors, whatever hardship, whatever betrayals they carry. And then a beautiful thing happens, because the burden of that psychic guilt and all of that pain gets lifted off of their shoulders and placed where it belongs, back on the collective, back on the community, back on us as citizens. So all of these 5 films actually highlight a different healing modality, if you want to call it that, of veterans, but they all come back to that same common denominator: simple rituals of telling their stories and being compassionately witnessed.
That's incredibly powerful, Frederick. Thank you so much. It actually reminds me of my junior ROTC days, when we would go to the VA hospital, and they would share their stories, and we would just sit and listen and think. When we were that young, we didn't know what was going on, but we learned how to listen and how to respect. And I think those seeds went really deep at that time. So that was very touching. Very.
Well, I hope you get it, that was a gift that you gave to those vets, just that witnessing and listening.
Thank you. One more question, and then we're going to take just 2 minutes to close. I know it's been a long day, everyone, but I think this is just really juicy. There, I saw a hand up here. Is there Dallas? Great, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Brother Dallas.
Hey.
Hey. So good to see you.
Yeah, we're having pretty good luck out this way. I guess it's more than luck. It's like ancient luck that we're just putting together and back together again. But we're working with having some great success with 5-year-olds up to 11-year-olds, and they've never learned how to control their thinking or their feeling or their how to control their bodies. But one of the biggest things is they're finding out how to go into spirit, and the spirit's the primary mover. And we're doing this in schools over here, and the pandemic kind of stopped us from training the whole school, students and the teachers. But I wanted to ask you, you talked about the veterans a little while ago. How about the little people? How has your processes helped the little people, especially when you go into some of your Zen teachings as well?
Well, the short answer, brother, is I'm not sure it has. And partly that's been conscious, because I don't feel like it's a young person's responsibility, not even a teen, much less a child who's, let's say, up to 10, 12 years old, to ask for the things that they deserve by virtue of being born into this human body. So a lot of my work has been geared toward the adults, toward the elders. And I really, in my own maybe soft, subtle way, I'm trying to slap them in the face and say, wake up to your responsibility to these young people, because they're the people that I want to move. Yeah, so that's that answer. But I can't resist this. Dallas is doing such beautiful work with school kids on the reservation at Pine Ridge. And I took a story of him mentoring children in grammar school, teaching them meditation by teaching them how to sit with grandfather rocks, right?
Right.
Anyway, I'm just saying that because, please, can you make some time, whether now or later, for this man to share this story. It's so moving and it's so beautiful. That's my one. That's the first one, yeah. It was about my wife dying and supporting her in her passage to her death, and then my journey through the grief afterwards.
And then the next book is Rites to a Good Life. Would you like to just share a few sentences about that?
Well, again, the last chapter is focused right now on our 2020-2021 collective planetary rite of passage. But I like to think of it as a kind of a bridge between all of this indigenous wisdom that my teachers have stuffed me with over the years into the contemporary world. And the invitation is there for parents and community members and people of all stripes and sizes to reinstitute daily, regular practices of ritual into our lives. Because the fact is, we don't need self-help books telling us what's wrong with us. There's nothing wrong with us at some level. What we need to do is take the lives that we have and just deepen their meaning and impact. And we can do it through ritual. And it's very simple. And we can create these ourselves. We can create them with our friends and neighbors. And we can do it for all different kinds of events that largely get overlooked in our society today. And it's just going to make all of our lives so much richer and fuller. So that's the best I can do to synopsize it. Oh, one other thing though, good news. Jack Kornfield just told me he's going to write the preface. So if that name means anything to you, then, I mean, he's one of my great teachers in life. And it's such a thrill and an honor to have him do that. So that'll be added on soon to the hard copies.